Hey, Mark, we did it. I should say I did it. Had a little technical difficulty there, but we got there. Good. How about you? Nice. I'll tell you, it's unbelievably mild here today. It's 60 degrees. 60. I'm located literally right. If you were to throw a dart, I would be right in the middle between Boston and New York, right in central Connecticut. Yeah, I mean, 60 degrees in February is unheard of. So that's a nice. Yeah, if you like, I could do FaceTime, but for nothing. Um, I think they're just talking about, the pretty much obvious stuff, but really you know, I think it's a good idea to take it back to, before, how I got into Zeppelin, basically how it was before the internet, the whole, the collectability, Zeppelin live, pretty much all the stuff we're into. So I think it's going to flow pretty easily. Uh, Yeah, but I think it'd probably be a good idea just to talk about really, because the thing I think is really interesting is how it was after Zeppelin ended, right? You had the years where basically it was pretty quiet, and then a few things along the, you had the guys who did all the fanzines, yourself included, that really kept it going. You had the box set come out that regained interest, then of course the solo projects, but it's it's really been a lot of fun through the years. It really has been. Everything's great, Mark. Really pleasure to be here, and looking forward to our discussion. I'm located in Connecticut, central Connecticut, right 2 hours from New York and 2 hours from Boston. Pretty much. What really got me into Zeppelin was when my brother purchased House of the Holy right after it came out. He's 4 years older than me. And at the time, I was more into the singles thing, when you're a little kid. And I don't know the reason, like a lot of other Americans, I guess, Houses of the Holy really, really hit home. And we played that album morning, noon, and night. So, it was after the 73 tour that I really started hearing it. But I loved that album a lot. And then, when they started touring in 75, we're really interested in trying to get tickets, but we failed in 75. So that was a disappointment, but that's when the whole journey started in terms of, looking at all the old magazines and, whether it's Circus, we followed the tours closely. And I remember when Physical Graffiti came out, we called every record store in the area to try to figure out which one would get it first. And we were there when the day it was released. It's funny because the first song I heard off the album was on an AM station of all things, and it was Custard Pie. About a week before, yeah, it was Custard Pie, and it was about a week before it came out. And then, but that was really the spark that really started everything. I mean, I had heard Whole Lot of Love when I was a real small kid, and I love that, of course. Who didn't, right? But how Physical Graffiti was a thing, between House of the Holy and Physical Graffiti, it really kicked off the whole, years of enjoyment. Correct. Yeah, it's just like your other guest, Tony Pauline. I saw the June 27 show, and I was 16. And for from in central Connecticut, it was a pretty big deal. And it's funny because I remember I was in high school gym class, and a guy who knew I loved Led Zeppelin, he was a guy who was a year ahead of me. In fact, I don't even remember his name, but he said, "Hey, Mike, check this out." And he had the full page ad from the day before New York Times. And up to actually get me a copy, and he gave it to me. And immediately when I got home, me and my older brother and four of his friends, we got a money order. We figured if we did a money order, we'll have better chances of scoring tickets. So we sent that in and hoped like hell that we'd get tickets to the show. And when a few weeks later, I get this envelope, and it's funny because it was my handwriting, and I was kind of confused by it. I don't know why. I just must have forgotten. And then I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, I remember, hey, that's my handwriting. These must be the tickets, and it was exciting. So, yeah, that was the first time we saw him, and convincing my parents took a little bit of effort, but they understood how important it was to us. So what they did is they made a night of it in New York City. They let us go to the show, and it was a memory for a lifetime. No, it wasn't my first concert. I actually my first concert was in 1975. I saw Johnny Winter in Waterbury, Connecticut, and the Ramones. The first concert they ever played outside New York City opened for Johnny Winter, and they were pelted with everything with whiskey bottles and fruit, you name it. Everything was thrown at them, and they had to leave the stage after like 15 minutes. But that was my first. I was a big Johnny Winter fan at that time. And, also saw a few other acts at the New Haven Coliseum, which was a pretty popular venue back in the day. I, the memories I have more than anything, and in fact, I actually had written a review of the show for Hugh Jones's Proximity magazine. But the thing I remember the show is they were about an hour and a half late, and it was crazy. The audience was just it was like a powder keg ready to explode. Everybody was so excited to see him because don't forget, at that point in time too, everybody had seen the song remains the same. So they were anticipating what they were gonna get in concert. And when they finally hit the stage, and you heard the first chords of the song remains the same, it was incredible. It was so exciting, and it really lived up to the expectation. I would guess that I probably saw it maybe 3 or 4 times, but I remember seeing it on opening night at the theater in downtown. We went the opening night to see the song remains the same, and of course it was such a thrill for us because we were such big fans. And as you know, even back then it was pretty difficult in 1975 to find any bootlegs of Led Zeppelin. There weren't too many to there weren't too many to be had, and quite frankly, the only one I could really remember even hearing on the radio at that point in time was they played the BBC from 1971 in 1975 on the radio. So that was kind of. Well, the one thing I was always interested in history in general, and I was always interested in music. So it kind of combined the two things. And my brain works. Everything I remember through dates. I store every date, so I have a really good memory for dates, and it allows me to basically keep everything stored the way I need to recall it. And so what I really got into was between all the magazines, all the music that I could get, I just kept on building and building and building a whole backlog of information on the band. The one thing I think that really sets Led Zeppelin off from a lot of other bands that has this kind of loyalty and fandom is the fact that there are so many bootlegs that are so different. Whereas you see some of the other bands. In fact, some of my other favorite bands, they play pretty much the same set list every night, pretty much the same way. There isn't too much improvisation. Whereas with Zeppelin, you could literally take 2 nights in a row and have a completely different listening experience from one night to the next. And I think that that's really what drove my interest in the band was, rather than just getting one bootleg from a particular tour and playing it and enjoying it, you could really see and hear the differences night by night, which was always, made you want to get that next bootleg. Absolutely. And I think between the books that were released on the band, whether it's Dave Lewis, my buddy Dave Lewis's old books, or whether it was Howard Milet or even Richie York, and then all through the years, it seems like everybody kept that torch alive because even with the culmination of our book, so many people came before us and really laid it down as well. And you look and see how many people produce fanzines, like such as yourself. I know you did the No Quarter, which I was a subscriber of. And of course, on Dave's Type of Loose, you have Sam Rapallo's Electric Magic, Dave Taylor's Zoso. You have, Hugh Jones's Proximity. I thought was phenomenal. Uh, so many people added to the whole, my love for the history of the band because I really couldn't get enough about reading about their concerts, reading about the band, and so many people brought so much to the table. Oh, also another one was Early Days, Latter Days by Andy Adams, who was also, yeah, Grant Burgess, yeah. All, I think one of the things that really why the fanzines played such an important role is, especially pre-internet days, is because when the interest in Zeppelin waned, they really kept the flame alive. And the funny thing is, when you space them out, you literally could hop from one fanzine to the next that always kept that I had going, which was great, because I would read the fanzines, couldn't wait to get the next one, and of course there are so many different periods of time where something new came along that provided an infusion to the whole love of Zepp, whether it was obviously when Zeppelin released the box set in 1990. Then you have the internet coming along, which made a huge difference. Of course, all the CDs, which came out like beginning in the early 90s, that also fueled a lot of interest. So it always seems like there's something to keep it going, which is great. I mean, even it's 2024, we're still talking about it 44 years later. I'm actually not a particularly big collector. I mean, you know, I know my wife would probably disagree with me on that one, but obviously all the official, of course, and I have a ton of magazines. I have a ton of fanzines. I don't collect too. I mean, I have a handbill from like the Cancel Olympia show in 1969. My one of my favorite pieces of memorabilia is my actual ticket stub, which is I got the whole word Zeppelin in there, which is good because I know a lot of times they ripped it too far. But I also have an ad, another ad from the New York Times that I got the tickets for, but it was a different one that I got than the one I use, obviously. And so little things here and there. I have a lot of melody makers, a lot of new musical expresses, discs, mainly focused on publications as opposed to memorabilia. Although thankfully, because of Dave Lewis, he got me both Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones's autographs when they signed type that I had written articles for. I have a ton of bootlegs. Oh yeah, no doubt. No, I was going to say is that between official CD releases and obviously all the easy downloads, but it's funny because in the early 90s, I had a friend from California. His name was Lyman Munson, who was a big Zeppelin collector. He had all the shows on cassette, and he was one of the first guys that really had such a comprehensive collection. And for probably a good 7 years, we would mail back and forth, the whole snail mail thing, and just got hundreds and tapes. And from there it went from obviously from all the cassette tapes to CD, and then it just became on your hard drive at that point, right? But yeah, no, I'm familiar with all the bootlegs. I have all of them, and you know, I'm not too official Zeppelin bootleg collector. I probably have about 40 of them or so, but I wouldn't say considering there's a few thousand at this point in terms of Zeppelin bootlegs. I wouldn't say I'm a big collector per se. Yeah, no question about it. I literally have every Zeppelin concert date off the top of my head. I think one of the key things for me was I always read a lot. I always, between the bootlegs, I always made spreadsheets. Obviously I was into Excel and had all the live information on spreadsheets. Next thing you know, what I did was I put together all these spreadsheets, and in fact, it ended up, going to Dave, many years ago. But I sent a bunch of them to Dave. But what I did was I put for each concert date, I would put the concert recording, the set list. I put all the bootleg information, and I'd separate them all onto separate pages based on date. So I was probably compiling this stuff beginning in the early 90s, probably about 91 or 2. And I think 1991 was the year Louis Ray's book came out, which was, that was another shot in the arm, I think, for fan, because he did a great job on that book and brought all the concert recordings that we were trying to acquire, and he really set a target for us to go seek out these recordings. And I think that was a turning point in terms of helping everybody out understand all about the Zeppelin concert history. And between compiling all this information and then working with some of the fanzines, for example, like I mentioned before, that I used to get Proximity magazine, and then I helped with an article from the show I went to. But there was a lot of information in that magazine that I took out and I put aside on my spreadsheet. Same thing with Type It Loose, of course. Dave was always very comprehensive in terms of covering Zeppelin. Let's face it, Dave was the flag bearer when the years were pretty lean. It seemed like there weren't too many Zeppelin fans left. He always kept the flame going. And so every time something new came along and the interest was sparked, it seems like, more information came out. And then what ended up happening was once the internet hit, that changed everything. That's when I really got into it a lot, because you're able to acquire so much more information. And then, when you go down the line, what really made probably the biggest difference was all the newspaper archives that were finally making its way online. Because that actually a lot later than you would think, And what really sparked interest with Type It Loose and contributing to that was in about almost 20 years ago now, Dave Lewis had sent out a little note saying he was updating the concert file that he had done with Simon Pallet, and requested if anybody has any information, could they provide it? And needless to say, I sent him a huge list of material, and he really appreciated it. And then Dave was very supportive and encouraging, and asked if I wanted to write for Type It Loose magazine, and that was an easy yes. And as you mentioned before, for many, many years, I did comprehensive tour retrospectives, usually anniversary based, whether it's the 40th anniversary of a show or whatever. But for many years, I did that. For many years, I was a writer, editor, and handyman for Type It Loose, A few of them. One of them was I found I had never seen it before, and I saw the show for February 16th, 1969, which was at the Baltimore Civic Center, because prior to that, and even in a lot of news reports, the last date of the tour was February 14th. So when I found pretty excited, because I hadn't seen that on any list or anywhere before. So that was pretty cool. And Another one that was more than a decade in the making. And in fact, even on the official site, a lot of people had contributed to a post about Led Zeppelin playing Las Vegas. And every myself had looked, and I think it was about 12 years when I finally was able to track down the exact date that that show was played. And it was on August 7th, 1969. And I ended up finding it in I think it was a Las Vegas Sun newspaper. And the reason is, whenever I did searches, I always made sure I spelled the name wrong too. And when you know, they had spelled the name Led Zeppelin wrong, but it said Led Zeppelin's. The article was basically the curfew for tonight's show has been extended because for the Led Zeppelin concert. So finally, after all that time, people had gone to the Las Vegas library to look for that date, and everybody tried to remember it, and so that was one. A lot of dates, or actually that I was able to track down, were either confirming canceled shows or coming up with more canceled shows. Like, for example, the Northern California Rock Festival from 1960. I mean, for many, many years, people thought they had played that when they didn't play it. And, so there are a lot of things I was able to track down. And, it's always exciting when you find another piece of the puzzle to add to everybody else's. Yeah, so it was kind of difficult tracking a lot of this stuff down because I always wanted to go to the original source rather than a secondary source. And obviously, a review of a concert in the next day's paper is about as good as you're going to get, because that way the concert was played and you know when and where it was played. So that was always good. But another game changer for me in terms of, documenting the whole band's touring history was maybe about 15 years ago, I found out that there was this underground newspaper archive on microfilm, and they were only in a handful of libraries in the United States. There were 500 rolls of microfilm, and they had newspapers. Now, this is way before any of these ended up on the internet, and I thought one of them was about 15 minutes from my house at a university. So I went over there probably about 5 weeks in a row and looked through all these underground reels and I found a ton of material. And it was so exciting because I was finding all this information that really was under wraps for so many years. And I thought that was a big game changer for me. It was a surprise when it came out, but what's even more surprising is how much documentation there actually was on it. Again, so that was really funny because for some reason it was only March 10th that got out, but March 14th was there all along, and in fact, there's so many different newspaper references to it. But that just goes to show, what a game changer having all those old newspapers finally online made, because then you can really put all the pieces of the Zepp puzzle together. Oh yeah, absolutely. Another thing I'm really interested in all along too is I was always fascinated with the venues where they played, because that's why I thought. But when I did the tour retrospectives for Type of Loose, I always wanted to have the venue pictures in there too, because that way you could see where they play, you see the ticket stub, you see the bootleg recording, so anybody could look at it and really get a feel for the whole show, what it was about, where it was played, and try to get a feel for the whole environment. And that was important to me, to, especially with the book, to get in all the venue photos, which, let me tell you, that's a small task, trying to track down all those. It, it's funny because just before we released the first book, for so many years, I was trying to track down this a photo of the Oakdale Music Theater, which is in Wallingford, Connecticut, not too far from me. And I know now it's a completely different theater, but at the time it was kind of like the Music Carnival in Cleveland. It was a tent, a musical tent theater, where it was, you know, theater in the round, you know, and the stage spun. But I can never find a photo of the original theater. And the funny thing is, probably about a week before it was ready to go to press, I was looking on archive.org and I saw a travelogue book from 1957, and it had a great picture of the Oakdale Music Theater in there. So we snuck that in there at the last second. And it actually has more of a meaning to me, because my first ever concert, not rock concert, but first ever concert, was a month before Zeppelin's concert there, and it was Tom Jones, believe it or not. I saw Tom Jones at the theater, and a few weeks later, my cousin Angela went to see Led Zeppelin at the Oakdale, and at the time it was a disappointment to her, because the reason why she got tickets is because her father wouldn't let her go to Woodstock. That was her consolation prize, which wasn't too bad a prize at all, was it? Oof, that's a tough one. Yeah, what's tricky with 77 too, especially for you know, I was kind of excited because a few years ago, Dave Lewis collaborated on a book, 1975 and 1977 photograph book, and Terry O'Neill, a famous photographer, took pictures of the Zeppelin show from June 7, 77. And I was really happy because that was the only show he took. So I know that every photo from that was that night and not the other five shows. You know, so that was encouraging to see. Fine, because most of them, the New York's kind of a mess. The only one you could kind of separate out is like the last show. Jimmy Page didn't wear, he wore plain white pants. So if you see New York white pants, you know it's the last night of the New York run, which was 6/14. Funny thing is, my wife had actually seen him the night before, 6/13/77, you know, a few years before I met her. But yeah, Zeppelin photos. It's, you know, it amazes me how many still pop up. Every once in a while, you'll see it especially on Facebook. You'll see somebody post a photo, and you're like, "Wow, I haven't seen that before. That's pretty cool." Yes. Well, thanks for the kind words, first of all. I really appreciate it because that really was what the intention was. We wanted to put a comprehensive book together that really united the whole, Zepp community because, there are so many different pieces of this book where so many people had a contribution to. They really, whether it's through whether it's through newspaper articles, whatever, but so many people contributed to the book, and so many people were so helpful. And so we both really appreciated that. But, in terms of how long it took a long, long, long time. I mean, one thing that helped us tremendously was from the years of doing all those tour retrospectives for Type It Loose gave us a nice head start because, that kind of kick-started the whole thing. And that really was the genesis of the book. But when I would say in terms of, compiling it seriously, probably I'll bet it took a good solid 4 to 5 years to pull it off. It was a lot of work. I mean, just tracking down all the memorabilia, even cleaning up all the images, because I did all that, cleaning up all the images and getting all the photographs and doing all the research. It took a long time, but we really felt in the end that it was worth it. It's funny you mention that, Mark, because it was supposed to be released on September 7th of 2018, which would have, by the way, been the 50th anniversary of Zeppelin's first concert. However, there was a delay with the printer, and I had gone to London for the book release, and I landed my first day in London. Actually, first time I actually met Dave in person too. Even though we had talked, we had 5,000 FaceTime calls through the year. Maybe not 5,000, but a lot. It was a lot. We talked constantly about it in emails and all that. So it was great to meet him. But that day, the day I met him, I met him in London, and he was he calls it his second office, the Spice of Life pub. I met him, and that's the first time I saw the book. And at the time, that was literally the only book. Because it came out like about 2 weeks after that. So we only had one copy of the book when I got there, and but when he showed it to me, it really was such a thrill. The whole experience going to London, meeting so many great people, all the guys we had spoke about before, whether it's Louis Ray and Andy Adams, and so many of those guys over there, Julian Walker. I mean, I hate to forget anybody's name. Good people, and they were all so welcoming, and it was a real thrill. We were there for a week. Me and my wife went over there, and it was a lot of fun. We had a good time. Dave sponsored an event on one of the last days I was there, and it was at the Atlas Pub, and it was kind of like a mini convention. There were probably a good 50 people there who were all the Zeppelin diehards and all the people that totally love Zeppelin. And it was probably a good 5-hour event at least, and had some videos going on, a lot of talking Zepp. It was just such a thrill, but to finally see the book and have it in hand after so much time, effort, blood, sweat, tears, the whole bit, the ups and downs of pulling it off, it was so fulfilling. It, Actually, the name Evenings with Led Zeppelin, that was something that was Dave's idea. He always liked the fact that Peter Grant used that as their tagline for their 1970 tour. I think he always had that in the back of his mind as what would be a good name for a book, and I liked it right away. So that was good. And the photo, in terms of why we chose that particular photo, is I always, Evenings with Led Zeppelin, to me, what that title represented was the connection between Led Zeppelin and the audience. And that's why, when I saw this particular picture, I'm like, this picture, probably more than just about any other, you could really feel that connection with the audience, and, how close they are and how much they're getting into it. And, one little thing I know that a few people have brought up before, but just to come clean on this one, most people that are familiar with those two photos, taken by a Time Life photographer, I might add, but John Paul Jones was not in that original photo. But the guy took another photo that was very similar to that, but John Paul Jones was in it. So what we did was, we could not have a Led Zeppelin book and have 3 of the 4 members of Led Zeppelin. Yeah. So we kind of flew John Paul Jones onto the cover there and placed him really where he was anyway. I mean, if you look at the other photo, you'll see that that's the case. But yeah, that was a little hack, if you will. The actual release date was, I think it was October 14th of 2018. And then the second one came out in 2021. And I think we're mistaken, where there are not too many books left. There's probably only a handful left at this point. You never know, Mark. When you think about it too, over the last few, what I was going to say, Marcus, over the last few years, I mean, you think of all the videos that have come out, like whether it's the bath video or all this. Obviously, more bootlegs have come out. That's a given. But one thing that's come out is a lot of UK newspaper archives that were not available. In the last few years, Birmingham, Liverpool, Newcastle, a lot of ads, a lot of articles, a lot of reviews can be added. So I'm hoping that we get another crack at it. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that one. Yes, exactly. The second edition had a black cover with Led Zeppelin in red print. The first one had like a sepia toned Led Zeppelin cover. It's the same picture. We wanted to make sure that people knew that a large portion of it was an update and not a brand new book, because we don't want to confuse people either. Well, the thing with Louis Ray is that Louis Ray really delved into each individual performance and reviewed it from how the performance was, how Robert Plant sang, how Jimmy Page played, John Bonham, the whole bit. So it was very musically analytical. And I actually think that Louis's book and our books really complement each other well, because our book is more about presenting the concert, presenting the set list, concert reviews from the newspapers, and all the associated ticket stubs, memorabilia, concert venues. So it's more like an encyclopedia of Led Zeppelin's concert history, whereas Louis Ray's book is more about the bootlegs and the. Correct. Yep, exactly. I think there is, and to be very fair about it, I mean those books came out in 1997. The first one came out in 97. The second one came out in 2005, and those books for their time were phenomenal. I mean those books for me too, even in terms of you know being a writer for Type It Loose. But the difference, I think, is we had the advantage of all the archives that came out, the newspaper archives that came out, because even in 2005, most of the newspaper archives were not online yet. So, I mean, why that's why one thing I wanted to point out was one of the key things in terms of the evolution of just being so into the history of Zeppelin. One of the key players in all of it really was Robert Godwin. I mean, his Led Zeppelin Collector's book and his press reports book was such an unbelievable resource for me, and it really was an inspiration in terms of how you do it right. I mean, I cannot believe the breadth of his research and everything he was able to compile pre-internet days. It's mind-blowing that he was able to do it the hard way, the real hard way. He couldn't just hop on Google and just, you know, get whatever he wanted at his fingertips. So hats off to him. He was a real inspiration. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's funny because I have it somewhere. I don't have it at my fingertips, but I actually figured out how many hours you would need to devote to listening to every Zeppelin bootleg, and let's just say it's a lot. Well, they they did, I think, 517 shows, and if I'm not mistaken, I think around 300 of them are bootlegs. I think that's the total. The one thing that I also wanted to point out was the revised edition to the first edition. We added a whole section on official, well, I should say unofficial bootleg releases. So listing of all the dates and the titles associated with those dates of all the recordings. That it's a guide so people could take a look in the appendix and see that. But yeah, there's a lot of bootlegs out there, that's for sure. And now, yeah, that is a pretty good percentage. And the thing is, one thing I will say is now it's getting to the point where, okay, here we go. I got it right in hand there. We have 288 recordings available, 516 concerts. But the thing to keep in mind that recordings available, those, that just means that there's still another, few hundred Zeppelin bootlegs out there waiting to be produced, right? Hopefully someday some more could keep coming out. I really don't think we do. I don't think, I think it's pretty much been exhausted. I know that in the book I also covered it too, was that gig in Maryland that they said that they played at the Wheaton Community Center there, and that one, so they're still questioning. I'm really not sure. It would be surprising if they actually did play that, but hey, you never know. I would guess if we were going to where gigs were played, it would probably be UK gigs in '68, maybe one or two of them that we had never heard before, perhaps. That's the only thing I could think of that may have been played. I don't, because everything else is pretty much been covered. But you know what? You never know, because every once in a while something pops up. Oh, you're right, for sure. And- Sure, physical graffiti. Sorry about that, Mark. I didn't hear you. What'd you say? We'll exclude Coda because that's the posthumous release. Into the Outdoor. The song remains the same, live version. Correct. Hats off to Roy Harper. John Bonham. I'm being a little bummer, but I mean, I would say it between those two. I'd say Jimmy Page. Favorite solo project, I would probably say. Uh, it's hard to say. I have to be honest. I haven't been a particularly big fan of the solo work. If I were to say anything, I'd probably say Robert Plant, Manic Nirvana, probably. Definitely not. First bootleg I ever bought was the Destroyer from 4/28/77 Cleveland, and I got it about 9 months after I saw him. Last bootleg I ever listened to was let's see, I don't remember. It was from March 21st, 1970, the Vancouver show. My favorite live show. That's also another tough one because you go from one thing to the next. But I would probably say the one that I like the most in terms of just listening to it over and over is I really like Orlando 1971. 81. That one I just thought that they were on fire. In fact, that particular month was a great month for Led Zeppelin fans. They just seemed to really hit off cylinders. Well, a few things I wanted to bring up that I may have overlooked in our initial discussion here is just the fact that I was really grateful to Sam Rapallo on the official website, who I've provided a lot of material through the years, and also one of the things he allowed me to do is I provided a lot to the Super Deluxe box sets, excuse me, and also the BBC box set that Dave Lewis and I did the liner notes on for the remastered deluxe box sets in 2015. So that was a real thrill, and that goes along the lines of the research through the years that I was able to get involved with, and also too, one thing I wanted to mention too with the revised book is that Brian Knapp, super collector Brian Knapp, really helped us out tremendously in our revised edition of the book too. He opened up his memorabilia collection, and I also collaborated with Brian on doing a special record collector Zeppelin collector's edition feature, which was nice. But yeah, no, I'm hopefully we'll continue to get some new music out of Zeppelin in one form or another, whether it's bootlegs, whether it's videos. I mean, it was interesting to see that Pontiac video that just came out a few weeks ago. That came out of the blue, which was kind of nice. So you never know what's going to pop up, but one thing's for sure is I'm sure we'll be all over it when it does. Hey, thanks a lot, Mark. Take it easy. Have a good one. No problem, Mark. Fun. I mean, hopefully, hopefully you don't have to edit out too many bumbles, but wow, that's that, that's that's amazing. Yeah, if I was older, I would have seen him a lot more, but unfortunately, what can you do, right? I mean, I'll tell you, one thing I wanted to point out, Mark, was I know in the end there I kind of jammed stuff into because I forgot to because like it's funny because even though we're talking about all the research and all that, one of the things that I really you know was proud of and happy about was and thankful for was that Dave Lewis got me involved in doing the liner notes for the BBC, and it's something that it's I saw that from the very get go. I mean, I edited that thing like you wouldn't believe. I really worked hard on that, and I did a lot for that. And I forgot to bring it up. It figures. It's unbelievable. Yeah, no, Brian's a good guy. Yeah, no, it's crazy. As is Dave, by the way, too. I mean, Dave is just a real good guy. And we worked together. So, I didn't want to like, quite frankly, I didn't want to talk too much about our personal, like, back and forth too much because, I don't want to talk out of line. But Dave's tremendous. We work so well together too. When you put the number of years and the amount of time and effort, and we were on the same page, like all the way through, and that made all the difference in the world because let me tell you, you can't pull something like that off unless you're in agreement. So it was really good. So, Mark, I want to ask you too. When do you think this will be online? No hurry. You know what? I can I'll send you a pic. Yeah, I'll send it because I think I have a pic of me in the book, so that'll even be better. But one thing for the BBC, the great thing is because I helped out on all the box sets. Uh, Although I think I got credit for I think I got a credit in all of them except like two of them, and I was like, what the hell? What the hell? I didn't say anything to Sam, but I'm like, what the hell, Sam? I provided. How did I miss those too? I didn't want to be a jerk about, it, but nah. If you look on the Zeppelin webpage, man, I provided a ton of shit to Sam through the years, and he's another guy that's been good to me. So like I said, everybody in this community has been great. I can't really complain about anybody. They've all been really cool, which is nice. Oh wow, that's awesome. Well, the one thing that well, that's I think they sent me I think they sent me three free super deluxe box sets. BBC, The Song Remains the Same. How the West Was Won. Yeah, those for sure. I think maybe one other one, and also too Page signed a Type It Loose for me around that same time. So that was kind of, and then John Paul Jones. I'll tell you one thing, that was a thrill. Here's another thing I forgot to mention too. Of course, inevitably there's going to be stuff I forgot to mention, but you know, when when I saw a picture of Dave with John Paul Jones holding my book, I mean, that that was a real thrill just seeing John Paul Jones. Do you know that Jimmy asked for a second copy for his vacation home? He did. He asked. He contacted Dave. Said, "Dave, can I have a second book for my vacation home?" Dave sent it. It's kind of cool. Oh, that's very cool. Yeah. No. All right, Mark. Hey, thanks so much. And by the way, I love your website. Great job. Oh, I could imagine that's a lot of work. And if you're ever looking for something or whatever, I mean, I have so many fucking images, Mark. I have thousands of images, and I'm always willing to help. No matter what, whether all the websites I've helped with, all the you know, I really put it out there. Yeah, me too. Yeah. Oh my God. That, yeah, they're nuts. Well, I'll tell you one thing. If I did that, I think that would be the final. I've been married for 37 years. I think that would be the final straw. My wife would have to kick me out if that if 100 600 of one thing is crazy, man. Thanks a lot, Mark. I appreciate it. You too. Bye bye.